So coming off of Mew2king's second place finish at EGLX, we got the word from Practical Task, one of the lead workers on the MPGR, that Mew2king will be on this year's ballot for the top 100 despite his minimal attendance. Let's take a comprehensive look at Mew2king's year to see where he could potentially end up being ranked. But before we jump into that, there's a pretty large preface that I think needs to be done here. First and most important is, just like any other player that is placed on the ballot, voters will be able to abstain from voting on them, and if enough players abstain from putting them on their rankings, they will not appear on the final ones. To pull directly from the summer ballot, the abstain option is clarified as, if you are not confident in your knowledge of a player, you may check abstain for them. I wanted to make sure I was interpreting this correctly, and PETA has clarified the statement by saying that it essentially means don't know enough about them or don't think they went to enough to be ranked. So Balloters have every right to not include Mew2king on their rankings. But for the later purpose of this video, I'll be operating under the assumption that he will appear on the rankings this year. There's also one more thing I want to throw into this video that I noticed I was missing last minute. I think it's a really dangerous precedent to set if Mew2king can just say he doesn't want to be included on the rankings, and that just happens. His reasoning, and I do want to take him at face value, is that his skill is not going to be accurately represented and that it will affect his seeding. And even if those concerns are misplaced, as we're going to discuss a little bit later in this video, it totally makes sense for someone who makes their living off of Smash to be concerned about their ranking that expresses how good they are at the game they make their money off of. But if we allow players to say they don't want to be included, or worse, campaign to be abstained, we could end up with people manipulating the system in the future. Say for example, and I'm sorry that I'm using him for an example, Hugs, who had a bit of a slump in the first half of the year, is a pretty prominent figure in the community, and had a ballot for the 2018 MPGR, just said that they didn't want to be ranked for the summer, and pushed for that to happen. He could then end up being abstained from the rankings, and then spin it as him still being the 23rd best player in the world like he was in the 2018 rankings. Or he could even spin it as having an oddly low or high ranking because of the mix of abstains and not abstaining. That could be spun as, wow, I don't think this rank is accurate, or there's an issue with the ranking system, or something like that. This isn't the best example, but what I'm getting at, and I do again assume that Mew2king is coming from a good place with it, is that if we allow something like this to manipulate the ballot or the people voting on the ballot, fly this time, then potentially it opens up the door for other people to do this maliciously in the future if they see that someone campaigning to get off the ballot or be higher or lower, have something not included happens here. It kind of really does set a dangerous precedent. Hopefully I'm getting the point across, and I'm sorry it's not a normal voiceover. I'm just including this at last minute. I think it needed to be said. And second is all of the tweets that Mew2king has been putting out based around ranking him. Actually, as I was writing this portion of the video, Mew2king deleted his main tweet addressing his concerns about the ranking and asking people not to rank him. I really hope this is indicative of a change of mindset about the whole situation, instead of because of the pushback he's been getting, but nonetheless, I commend him for removing the tweet. However, I still do want to clarify two specific things about the situation that he mentions in other tweets that are still not deleted. First is a reminder that rankings and seedings are not the same thing at all. Rankings are meant to serve as a comprehensive look about how a player's year went, whereas seeding is meant to focus more on recent performance. To borrow an example from Ambi's discussion on the danger of rolling rankings, who is the current 5th best player is fundamentally a seeding question, and who had the 5th best year is fundamentally a rankings question. The other part is Mew2king's concerns about the rankings, in his words, undervaluing his actual abilities. Fortunately for Mew2king, there's a pretty easy way to fix that. Attend more events. And I'm not just saying he could have attended more events in the beginning of the year. GTX, Canada Cup, Genesis Black, the MMOM Memorial, and DreamHack Atlanta are just some of the many events left for the year to help pad his resume and show us that he's still on top of his game. I don't think anyone is up in arms about Wizrobe or Leffen's ranking being inaccurate to their actual abilities, and we're ranking them both based off just 6 events. And I think the legions of Mew2king fans would be excited to see him compete at least one more time this year. And there are rumors circulating that we may see him in Melee singles at DreamHack, GTX, and or Overlords, so it looks like we might be getting just this. So with all that important groundwork laid and clarifications made, let's talk about how Mew2king's resume for the year compares to everyone else's. For a refresher, here's what happened at the 3 events he attended this year. At Genesis, Mew2king finished 33rd without picking up any top 100 wins while losing Game 5 sets to both Bananas and Triff. Then 8 months later at the Big House 9, he returned with a splash, finishing at 5th place. He picked up his first quality wins of the year against Rick, Mike Hayes, IBDW, and HBOC before losing to Zane and Fiction. And his third and final tournament of the year was EGLX, where he finished 2nd, just moments away from double eliminating HBOC of the event. Behind his sets against HBox that even their record at 2-2 for the year, Mew2king picked up a win over none as well. And that's all we got to work with. This small data set with some incredible wins from someone with such a lengthy history competing in the game makes ranking Mew2king this year fundamentally different than ranking anyone I've ever had the rank before. It's not even something as simple as legacy bias giving him the nod over other players in this ranking. Being 2-2 with HBox for the year is something that any other player in the top 10 would be glad to have on the resume. And his worst losses being Triff, Fiction, and Bananas is better or just as good as many people around this range as well. Because of this small data set that we have, everything of Mew2king's has to be amplified, both good and bad, which is something that also rings true for Leffen and Wizrub this year. One way to contextualize it is that every event of his is 33% of his resume. With what he's got, he doesn't quite have the results to hang out with his former peers in the top 6. All of these top 6 players have multiple wins against other members of this skill range where Mew2king isn't able to match that. He's also untested against players like Leffen, who he traded sets with last year, and against players like Plup and Axe, who is 0-4 and 0-2 against respectively. We obviously can't just directly copy and paste Mew2king's head-to-head records against these players, again both good and bad, from last year, but I think it's fair to infer a slight decay from those records based on the small amount of data we have from Mew2king and the comparably much larger data sets we have from those players. But in that 7 to 10 tier right below, Mew2king fits right in. To show that off, let's put his year up against Plup, Amza, and IBDW. Their losses outside the top 6 end up looking much more similar than you would expect, with a lot of the same names showing up for all 3, with Mew2king obviously having much less depth of losses from only 3 events. And the exact same can be said in regards to wins for these 4 players as well. Having an HBox win is for sure rare, which makes them valuable for any player they have on the resume, but both IBDW and Amza have these as well. And I don't see anyone arguing either of these 2 players should be in the top 6 right now. Same goes for losses. IBDW is in the top 10 for almost everyone right now, and he's got many more losses than we could expect Mew2king to pick up across the same number of events. Where he fits among these players is definitely up for debate though, much like the 3 to 6 portion of the ranking right now, and I think there are valid arguments for different positions among these guys. For me, I think my 7 to 10 looks like Amza, Mew2king, Plup, IBDW, but by no means is that locked in for my end of the year ballot, and for sure is up for debate. And I think that about does it for this video. Let me know down in the comments where you think Mew2king should end up being ranked for the year, if he does end up being ranked at all. Also, if you're in the mind that he shouldn't be ranked, I'd love to understand what your reasoning is behind that. If you enjoyed this video, consider hitting that subscribe button, follow me over on Twitch for weekly streams talking about and playing Melee, and join my Discord server to keep up to date with what kind of content is coming out next. And that's about it from me. I've been SaveAsUntitled, and I will see you guys next time.